All right. How is it going, everyone? Today we are going to do a book review of Circles of Power. It was a good one. If you are just getting started, this is the book I would recommend. If you're actually interested in ceremonial magic, there's a lot of books that I could recommend. A lot of people would recommend Modern Magic by Donald Craig. Is it? Why am I second guessing myself? Donald Craig, I believe. There is the Green Brick by the Ciceros, but this is a very well-rounded one. John Michael Greer is an excellent author. He's one of my favorites. He brings a very grounded and practical approach to the table, which I very much appreciate. I try to do the same myself. I recognized a lot of myself in his writings, you might say. There is a lot of different perspectives in here. It comes from a Kabbalistic sort of Golden Dawn perspective, but a lot of what's valuable in this book isn't the ceremonies and the rituals. It's the perspective. And this was one of the first, certainly one of the first 5, perhaps one of the first 3 books that I bought on magic. And when I first started buying books, I was looking for ceremonies and rituals. I was looking for that grimoire that had that ritual in it. The one that would do it, So I ignored a lot of the text, like the preface and the introduction, the chapter heads. I would flip straight to the diagrams and the rituals and the ceremonies, and I would get things from it, and those helped me to grow. But the thing about books like this, when they're written by a knowledgeable, experienced author, I should speak for myself, I almost certainly do get more from the philosophy and the perspective than the actual rituals. And there's a few reasons for that, but one of the reasons is the rituals are built on the philosophy, right? What is a ritual? It's a practical philosophy. It's an active psychology, is one way to think about it. So one of the best things you're going to get from this book isn't the rituals. It's not the ceremonies. It's little tidbits of perspective that he gives. One of which is, I don't know if I actually want to try to find it on the spot, but he talks about, your house has light bulbs and it has energy using things, but you have to actually bring electricity in. You have to bring a line of power into the property. And this is such a useful metaphor because obviously, the electricity needs to be grounded. Well, I shouldn't say obviously, but the electricity needs to be grounded, for one. It needs to go directly to this place. It needs to connect to the light bulb. It needs to actually make a contact and not just be able to see it or, touch it intermittently. A professional needs to install it. You could go on with the metaphor. This is literally just like one sentence in this book. It is a beautiful metaphor. Some of the specific sections that I have highlighted, we can go over. So, this isn't one of the first, but one of the first that I'll go over. One of the cool things about this book is it goes over talismanic images, or you could call them different things. They are called talismanic, TELESMATIC images. And here's a section I have sort of pencil starred. The essential rules are these. The image used in most kinds kinds of talismanic magic, is a conventional angel, human-like and winged, as beautiful as the imagination will allow. Coarse or ugly images tend to produce muddled energy and are less effective. So keep in mind that we're talking about like workings of divine inspiration, Kabbalistic, Sephirotic, Golden Dawn type magic here. So like you can format this. Everything on this channel can be reformatted left, right, or center. Keep that in mind. The letters of a name, either taken from traditional lore or devised according to a method that will be discussed in Chapter 10, are converted into the correspondences in Table 5, which I'll show in a minute, and applied to the image. The first letter determines the head, and the following letters determine the rest of the form, down to the feet. Skin and hair colors are limited to those that occur in human beings. Gender and build are averaged out among the letters of the name. Colors of garments and the like, which are taken from the table of Hebrew letters in the appendix, are to some extent treated in the same way. Transitions in all cases should be smooth, not abrupt, to avoid confusion of energies. So if it's like an eagle head and like a human's shoulders, like you don't want the eagle's head to just be like huge and then it snaps into the human body, or like a human head and then it just like snap into like feathers. Like allow it to blend, I think is what they're getting at. So here is the table here. If you want to take a screenshot, I'll try to get it as crisp and clear as I can. Okay, so that's just one interesting thing in here that I'd never really heard anyone else talk about. Like if you made an egregore. Let's do that. We've talked about it on this channel. So Kanemiel, okay? So Kof, round-faced, full figure. Kanemiel is an egregore that I've used to explore explore parts of the Qliphoth, I'll say. We're not going to get too much into it right now. So Kof, it is spelled Kof Nun Mem Yod Aleph Lamed. Kof is round-faced, full figure, figure half defined, as though through mist, male. Okay. Then we have Nun. I don't know why that took me so long. Nun is square and determined, sinewy. Okay, so strong. Mem is reflective, dreamy, lightly colored, medium build, androgyne, more female than male. Yod is very white and rather delicate, translucent. So we've got a very bright but tan, a luminous but tan, misty figure so far. Aleph is slender, winged, and radiant, androgyne, again more male than female. And then Lamed is well proportioned, medium build, female. So we're going to have the image of this entity, if you so choose, built just like that. If you have trouble scrying or trouble with clairvoyance, this can be a great segue for that. Moving on. Another really cool thing that this has is it has, and this is more ceremonial, but it's got diagrams of the unicursal hexagrams for invoking and banishing. And then it goes into numbers. It goes into Planetary Kamas. It goes to explain the mystic numbers of the planets and all of that. For those of you that are into the mathematics and stuff, here are the Planetary Kamas, the magic squares. This is pretty effective stuff. I've got some notes in the bottom there. Okay. Then we get into planetary seals, intelligence seals, and things like that. Now, moving on to another interesting section that I thought is the Rose Cross ritual. This is not something that is covered very often. It is covered in this book. It's mostly for healing and enlightenment, which I know most of you aren't into, cool stuff like healing and enlightenment. So we're not actually going to cover the ritual itself. I'm just mentioning that it's in here. It has all of the traditional Kabbalistic exercises like the middle pillar, the cross, the Kabbalistic cross, all that stuff. But I'm trying to cover things that you haven't heard of before, potentially. So, we get into something called the greater middle pillar exercise, which does a really cool thing called the greater conjunction, which is where it doesn't just bring in light from above, but it brings in green energy from the earth, and then you mix them in your center into like a lime green energy. That's pretty cool. Feels pretty good to me. I use that a lot when I'm doing healing work. Then we have a section on opening and closing. The next opening and closing a ceremony. The next interesting part was on the creation of talismans. I love that he describes a talisman as a physical anchor for a pattern of non-physical force. So we're talking about a form that acts as an anchor for a force. And this force expresses itself in a geometrical and or patternistic manner, okay? A patternistic way. I'm not going to get into too much of this. It gets into making the talisman, the physical basis, part 1. Making the talisman, part 2. The symbolism, a basic ritual of consecration. Here's some ideas for making talismans here. Watch the God names, those of you who are offended by such things. Okay. And again, I'm not trying to cast shade on people that have aversions and things like that. Just try not to be so triggered by things. So then there's the talismanic ritual of consecration, and then flashing tablets, a ceremony of deconsecration, if necessary. And then we get into a section of chapter 11, which is evocation. A lot of you send me questions about evocation. I know this is pretty deep in the book, but so like you have to read this much to get to here. But there's a reason for that. And I can tell, like, a lot of people that are asking me questions about evocation, you're not ready. You're not ready for it. And go ahead and do it anyway, because that's how you get ready for it. But the reason that I say you're not ready is because the types of questions they ignore the philosophy of the subject. They aren't grounded questions. Like people expect to physically evoke a demon that they can touch. Or people expect to evoke a demon and it's going to bring them a beautiful woman when they haven't left their house in 3 fucking months or showered in 2. Okay? So most of you who know how to perform an evocation, you don't really need any tips on that. But for the people that do, this book covers pretty in depth. It gets into the uses of evocation, dealing with spirits, preparing for evocation, the selection of spirits, a ceremony of evocation for knowledge, and it actually gives the ceremony here. It says you must complete the 2nd degree opening before you do this, but then it goes into a ceremony of evocation for practical magic, the problem of obsession and the sphere of sensation, exorcism, and then we get into invisibility and transformation in chapter 12. And I really like, just like the Talismanic Images, he covers something really cool that we'll get into in a minute with transformation. So, the nature of invisibility. We'll begin with invisibility. In the legends of the Hermetic tradition, the ability to go about unseen is the stereotypical power of the adept. So, there's a little bit of a hint there, pardon me. This is distracting me more than you probably. There's a clue there. In the legends of the Hermetic tradition, the ability to go about unseen is the stereotypical power of the adept. Holy cow, this is going to drive me crazy. So, the stereotypical power of the adept is one who can avoid being known, who can avoid being seen. So, a lot of the adepts out there, they don't look like me. betray themselves, so to speak, by having this beard and this hair and these gauges, and bracelets and rings and wearing all black and all of this stuff. Most of the adepts that you're going to meet, they'll never mention that they're an adept. They'll never talk about magic. They'll never wear any sort of trinket, but they might be the most powerful people that you meet. Now, why do I look and dress the way that I do? One is because this is what my body does. This is what it does. Why do I wear all black? Talked about this. This is the third or fourth time I've mentioned this, but black helps me focus. Black helps me concentrate. Does it do other things? Yes, but that's why I chose to start wearing all black. When you look the way that I do, in a time like this, it cuts through the shit. I often call it a filter process. If you don't want to talk to me because of how I look, I probably don't want to talk to you. Is that foolproof? No. The other thing is, people tend to say that I look like a wizard or I look more mystical or whatever. That opens some very interesting doors of conversation. There are people if I still had short hair and no beard, and I still dressed with the planetary colors of the week like I used to, there are people that would just they would never have spoken to me about breathwork. They would never have spoken to me about creating changes in their life for the better, losing addictions, going for the promotion and getting it, asking out the person that they work with that they've been scared to ask out for months. I tend to take both of those things as useful. I have digressed so far, I apologize. But it raises the question of why certain people look the way they do and why certain people don't. In the legends of the Hermetic tradition, the ability to go about unseen is the stereotypical power of the adept. Is that all magical invisibility is about? Hell no. But the more you understand about being physically invisible, the more you understand about being etherically and astrally and intellectually invisible, or perceivable even. Moving on. The Shroud of Concealment, the Ceremony of Invisibility, Returning to Visibility, the Body of Transformation, the Naming of the Animals, and then we get into the section of Zodiacal Attributions and Mammals. So I will show this because it's easier to show than it is to explain. With each, I guess it's really not, with each sign there are attributes, and with each sign there are animals. So Aries animals are strong and often aggressive, and may be noted for jumping or climbing. They are often solitary, so on and so on. Mammals. The zodiac of the mammals then follows in a pattern like this. Aries, climbing or jumping ungulates, sheep, goats, antelope. Taurus, horned grassland ungulates, cattle and bison. Gemini, canids or canids, dogs, wolves, foxes, raccoons, and their kin. Someone said I look like a raccoon, especially when I get these bags under my eyes. That's funny. Anyway, you get the idea. So that's for like spirit animal work, shamanism, astral travel, stuff like that. Another zodiac following similar patterns can be made for the marsupial mammals of Australia. Then we get into planetary attributions, preparing for the ritual, the ceremony of transformation. So here's another interesting section. This is what I was getting to. The vibratory name for the bobcat, the most common North American wildcat, is thus constructed from fire, Mercury, and Leo. In Hebrew letters, this is Shin Bet Tav. Shabbat or Shebet. Oh, and might be pronounced Shebet or Shebet. Some other vibratory names that may be of some interest are as follows. The wolf is fire, Mars, Gemini, Shapaz, Shin, Pe, Zion. The fox is fire, Sun, Gemini, Shiraz, Shin, Resh, Zion. The house mouse is fire, Moon, Virgo, Shigi, Shin, Gimel, Yod. Is that how you say mouse? I thought it was Mahmud. Or I forget. Anyway, moving on. Now I kind of want to look up how to say mouse. Anyway, I thought it was like something. Anyway, I digress. The golden eagle, Air, Sun, Scorpio, Aaron, Aleph. These are different names than I know. Anyway, moving on. Aleph, Resh, Nun. So it gives the spellings of the names of the animals that one might transform into, and then gives the qualities. So, very interesting. Not a lot of books cover that. Ceremony of transformation. And then other transformations. Do I want to go into this right now? No. So spiritual development is the next chapter, and it goes into the invocation of the name, the vibration of another name, rising on the plains, the holy guardian angel, the invocation of the higher self, and then we get into some other things, the formula of the equinox. Now, the last thing I think that I will cover is the index for the equinox ritual. Then it gives a sort of formula. Evocation, consecration of talismans, or generation of natural phenomenon. If you don't know what that means, you're probably not ready for it. Generation of natural phenomenon or phenomena. We get into invisibility, we get into transformations, we get into spiritual development. Then we get into, this is a Kabbalistic index, essentially. So for instance, it says the elements. And this section, the elements of Earth. And this is a whole index of correspondences, essentially. So it lists Earth, gives the symbol, the letter of the Tetragrammaton, the name of God, the archangel, the angel, the ruler, the elemental king, the elementals, the Hebrew name of the element, the direction, its Hebrew spelling, its season, its time of day, its qualities, and its nature. And it does this for all of the elements. Then, after that, all 5 elements even. After that, we get into the planets, and it lists its symbol, the letter of Ararita, or Ararita. Name of God, archangel, angelic host, intelligence, spirit, Hebrew name of planet, element, and direction. It does this for all of the traditional planets. Then it does it for the spheres. For instance, Keter, the first sphere. Hebrew spelling of the name, meaning of the name of God, archangel, angelic host, the astrological correspondence, and the element that is related to it. This index alone, might be worth the price of it for some of you. Then we've got the Hebrew alphabet and some gematria, the king scale, and the astrological correspondences, polygons and polygrams at the very end. So, like, I know I didn't do a great job of selling this, but I'm not trying to convince you on any one of these topics. It's sort of the all-encompassing aspect of this. And keep in mind, I also skipped over most of the ceremonial stuff. There is a lot of ceremonial stuff in here for the beginner as well as the intermediate practitioner. So this is definitely worth grabbing. John Michael Greer is one of the better authors out there, in my opinion. If you don't think that people like him write your material, try using a lens. Try translating. Try using it differently than he suggests. And I don't mean like corrupt the rituals. I'm saying like don't just start changing names and shit. Like make sure everything is still gels. But yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching. Take care. If you have any questions or comments or concerns, leave them below. Any specific questions about the book, I'd love to answer for you. And yeah, have a good rest of the day. Take care. And yeah, thanks for stopping by.